The morning light slips through faded curtains as our hero, maybe you, at 47, maybe your neighbor down the street, stands at the kitchen counter with a steaming mug and a phone glowing with a bank balance. The house hums with ordinary life, a radio playing softly, a stack of unopened bills, a child's drawing taped to the fridge. They breathe in, and an old, sensible voice rises in their head, "We must be careful. Don't risk what we have." It sounds like protection, like the voice of experience. Out loud, they whisper, "I can't afford to be reckless," and the words feel responsible, even noble. Across the room, a friend's text arrives, "I started investing small, see this return." The hero scrolls past, feeling the familiar tug, curiosity edged by caution. In a quiet flash of memory, there is a father and his stern advice, a past mistake that burned, the emergency fund that saved a moment of panic. Fear wears a sensible suit. It keeps you from storms. Yet the same fear tightens the hands around opportunity until it slips away. I speak gently from the doorway of their life. Fear can be your watchman, not your identity. The camera of the mind widens. We see choices made from fear, safe accounts that barely grow, postponed dreams, a business idea shelved. We also see other choices, tiny acts of courage that ripple, a phone call, a workshop attended, a seed investment that sprouts. The law of attraction listens not to logic alone but to the dominant emotion you carry. When fear leads, the world mirrors caution. When clarity and courage lean forward, the universe opens channels you didn't imagine. A neighbor knocks, asking, "Are you okay?" The hero forces a smile and says, "I'll be fine," but inside, a question stirs, soft and honest, am I protecting what I have, or am I letting fear define me? That question is the turning point. It hums with possibility. If this resonates, like this moment and stay with me, subscribe so you can walk the next steps with a calm, practiced courage. In the next scene, our hero will step toward the hesitation, not to erase fear, but to move through it. Which financial fear holds you back today? He sits at the kitchen table as twilight filters through the blinds, a neat stack of bills like a small, patient storm. The room smells faintly of coffee and lemon cleaner, the clock ticks as if measuring the weight of indecision. She watches him from the doorway, not to judge, but to see the exact moment when caution turns into a cage. "Maybe we should wait," he says, voice low, words folded in the habit of safety. She remembers a time when that voice belonged to hope, cautious, curious, ready to learn. Now it sounds tired. "What if we lose what we have?" he adds, and the question lands like a lid. I tell you, gently, fear is speaking in a sensible dialect. It offers solid arguments, spreadsheets of possibilities, a chorus of what ifs. But listen to the way it narrows your field of view. In the glow of the lamp, the numbers on the paper appear larger than the door across the room. The law of attraction isn't a promise that fear disappears when you wish hard enough, it's a mirror, it reflects the energy you feed. When you feed fear, the universe returns small, defended choices that keep you exactly where you are. When you feed clarity and courage, it opens pathways you could not see before. She crosses the room, sits beside him, and they talk differently. "Tell me one thing you could do that feels reasonable," she says, not to push but to name a step. He hesitates, then offers a whisper of an idea, a modest investment course, a meeting with a planner, a small amount set aside monthly. The moment they name it, the shape changes. Naming converts shadow into plan. You can feel the shift, the air relaxes by a fraction. It isn't the absence of worry. He still worries about loss, about mistakes, about regret. But now worry shares space with a decision. The practical part of this journey begins here. Learn to distinguish prudence from paralysis, set one specific, manageable action, and let that action be your proof to the universe that you are willing to move. Which financial fear holds you back today? If this lands with you, like and subscribe to stay with this journey. We'll walk the next step together. In the next scene he takes a small but decisive action, and the consequences are quieter and larger than he expects. They sit at the kitchen table long after dinner, the lamp casting a warm circle over a stack of bank statements and a small, folded envelope labeled savings. Outside, the neighborhood is quiet. Inside, their hands keep rearranging the same numbers as if a different order could make the risk vanish. "What if I lose it all?" they whisper, the sentence more familiar than their own name. The fear has been a steady companion for years, sensible sounding, polite. It taught them to save, to avoid rash decisions, to sleep with one eye open. But tonight it feels heavier. Tonight they want to know if that caution has become a cage. I lean in, not to argue, but to name what they already feel. Fear is a force that draws more of itself. When they speak it aloud, the universe answers in cautious echoes, small, safe choices that look like protection but feel like slow drought. So we do something different. We separate prudence from paralysis. "Write the worst-case scenario," I say gently. They frown, then scribble, lose 20%, learn something new, recover slowly, and beneath it, surprisingly, a line that says, "I choose to act anyway." The act is tiny, an automated monthly transfer the size of a dinner out, a message to a trusted advisor, a 30-minute evening to learn one investing term. No hero steps onto a battlefield without a plan, no change needs to be dramatic to be real. As they set the transfer, a memory surfaces, their father's careful thrift and their own secret hunger for more. They speak aloud, softer now, "I'm scared, but I'm trying." The apartment seems to breathe with them. The first small deposit posts the next morning. It's not a windfall, but it is proof that intention plus motion rewrites expectation. The guide's voice is steady. Courage is not absence of doubt, it is choosing despite it. Each micro-step changes the feeling tone, and the world replies with opportunities that feel reachable. If this resonates, give the video a like. Which financial fear holds you back today? Stay with me and subscribe to continue, because the next step is when our hero makes a choice that will test everything they thought was true, and it begins with one click. The kitchen light was soft, the rain sketching thin silver lines on the window, and the hero sat with a stack of envelopes that seemed heavier than their numbers. At 50, they had learned how to be careful, how to protect what they had built. A voice in the head, patient and persuasive, hummed the old mantra, "Better safe than sorry." It sounded like prudence. It felt like survival. But tonight, under that warm lamp, the voice also sounded like a ceiling. I speak now as the guide who has watched this pattern 1,000 times. Fear often speaks in practical sentences. What if you lose it? What if markets crash? What if you made the wrong choice? So we treat it like a cautious friend, not an enemy. The real question is whether that friend is advising strategy or enforcing a freeze. Our hero leans back, closes their eyes, and admits aloud, "I'm tired of doing nothing." The admission is a small earthquake. A neighbor knocks, offering a cup of coffee and a different kind of language, one that names possibility instead of only danger. "You don't need to be reckless," the neighbor says, "just curious." That single word, curiosity, shifts the room. The hero remembers a conversation with their daughter about the idea of testing reality rather than surrendering to it. "Start small," the daughter had said. "Make a plan you can live with, then watch what happens." So they do something tiny and decisive. They open the laptop, create a new folder titled Goals, and type a sentence that feels foreign in its clarity. "I want money to serve my life, not to limit it." The trembling remains, but a map begins, a budget that allows a modest monthly experiment, a visualization routine before sleep, a short course to learn the basics of investing. Courage here is not the absence of worry, it is signing up for the lesson with heart still pounding. As they set the first reminder on their phone, the air in the kitchen feels different, as if the rain outside now applauds. You might recognize that tug between caution and possibility. What small step could you take tonight that honors both? If this resonates, tap like and stay with me or subscribe quietly to walk the next part together. In the next scene, the hero tests their first experiment and discovers that the barrier was narrower than the imagination made it. The morning light filters through the curtains as they sit at the kitchen table, a spread of papers like small mountains, bank statements, a glossy investment brochure, a note from a friend who swore the market had been kind. Their fingers hover over the laptop trackpad. "What if I lose what I have?" they whisper, not looking up. The voice is familiar, steady, cautious, trained by years of careful choices. It sounds sensible. It sounds like protection. But it also tightens the throat and shrinks the horizon. I step closer in the mind's eye and speak softly, the way a guide speaks to someone standing at the edge of a new path. Protection is necessary, I say. Paralysis is optional. They laugh at that, a small, surprised sound, and for a beat the room feels wider. The scene shifts into detail, the hum of the refrigerator, the slight dampness of a cold mug left from last night, the calendar with a box around the date they promised themselves they'd start. We hear a neighbor's dog barking, life continuing outside their worry like proof that the world is not built to stop when you fear. We break the fear down, practical, clinical, identify the exact risk you fear, measure it, and choose a first move so small it feels almost trivial. Dialogue becomes rehearsal. I'll open a learning account first, they say, testing the words. I'll set aside 30 minutes a week to read, and I'll put aside a deliberate, modest amount to invest, not everything, just enough to learn with. I guide them to frame the intention, clarity over reaction, curiosity over avoidance. We breathe together, their shoulders drop. Courage here is not absence of worry but a rhythm of decision, plan, act, review. A small success arrives, a confirmation email, a friendly customer service rep explaining options, a neighbor complimenting the new plant on their windowsill, as if the universe reflects the shift. It's not magic, it's momentum. Each tiny step rewrites the dominant feeling from I can't to I'm trying. Before they even realize, they click confirm on a modest investment and feel fear and relief in the same breath. Which financial fear holds you back today? If this resonated, tap like and tell me in the comments, subscribe and stay with me here next. We'll turn this first brave step into a plan that grows without letting fear reclaim the steering wheel. The hero sits at the kitchen table, late afternoon light slipping between the blinds, a scatter of bills and bank statements like quiet judgments. He rubs his temples, the familiar tightening of the chest when the future feels uncertain. What if I lose everything, he whispers, not asking the room so much as testing the boundary of his own courage. Across from him, the guide's voice is calm, like warm tea. What if you don't, it answers. What if what you've guarded so fiercely has been keeping you from what could grow? We follow him into the small, ordinary moments where transformation actually happens, the slow click of a laptop as he opens a low-fee investment platform for the first time, fingers trembling but steady, a walk in the park where he practices a simple visualization, seeing money as a river he can step into, not a cliff he must cower from. Dialogue plays out in the silence, his inner critic cataloging reasons not to act, the guide naming them plainly. Prudence asks for information. Paralysis makes information an excuse, the guide says. He repeats it aloud, tasting the difference. Cinematic details map the internal shift, the shallow breaths deepen, the shoulders drop a fraction, the posture of defense softens into one of readiness. He does not leap into a risky scheme, instead, he creates a small experiment, a $50 recurring transfer, a 30-day learning pact, a notebook where he writes one gratitude and one micro goal each evening. He frames these not as guarantees of immediate windfalls, but as practical signals to the universe, clarity of intent matched with consistent action. We hear him talk to a friend on the phone, admitting the truth, I'm scared. But I'm trying one step. The friend answers with ordinary courage, that's all it takes. One brave step is still a step. The guide explains how the law of attraction responds, not to perfect confidence, but to your dominant feeling. Fear keeps you searching for excuses, curiosity and decisive movement attract new possibilities. By the end of this block he has traversed hesitation, not by banishing fear, but by letting it walk beside him as he takes pragmatic steps toward growth. He feels lighter, not because the numbers have changed, but because his relationship to them has. Which financial fear holds you back today? If this landed with you, tap like and stay, subscribe to continue, where we'll design your first brave financial experiment together. The kitchen is quiet except for the slow tick of the wall clock and the hiss of the kettle. He sits at the table with a stack of bills, the glow from his phone painting his face in soft blue. For years he treated caution like armor. I don't want to risk what I've built, he tells his reflection in the window, but tonight something in him is different. He remembers a conversation with a friend earlier in the week. "Start small," she had said, handing him a printed spreadsheet. "Experiment like a scientist, not a gambler." He laughs softly, folding the paper into a plan instead of a decision to avoid. Inside, fear tightens its grip, images of loss, of starting over, yet alongside it there's a quieter voice, curiosity. He makes a list. Emergency fund intact, insurance in place, 1-month trial for a low-fee investment, a short course to learn the basics. Each line is a small bridge between where he stands and the possibility of growth. He imagines the universe responding not to wishful thinking but to the dominant emotion he broadcasts. If he broadcasts retreat, the world gives him retreat. If he broadcasts intent laced with careful courage, opportunities shift toward him. He calls his partner. "I'm going to try something small," he says. Her pause is a question, then a breath of relief. "We'll track it together," she replies. They set a weekly check-in, a ritual that turns abstract fear into a practical experiment. That night he opens an account, invests an amount that would barely be missed, and writes a simple intention: "I choose steady growth with wise steps." He visualizes not a windfall but the confidence that comes from doing what he feared, moving forward. Over the next weeks, tiny confirmations arrive: one thoughtful email from an advisor, a small dividend credited, the calm that comes from having a plan. Fear doesn't vanish, it shows up at odd hours like an uninvited guest. But he no longer hands it the steering wheel. Courage, he learns, is a series of decisions, a tempo of repeated small actions that reshape identity. As his dominant emotion shifts toward possibility, so do his choices. Which financial fear holds you back tonight? If this resonates, keep walking with me. There's a simple framework next that turns these small experiments into lasting momentum, and I'll show exactly how to build it. He sits at the kitchen table while morning light skims the edges of unpaid bills, the phone screen casting a blue glow over a cup of coffee gone cold. In the silence his mind rehearses the same arguments. What if I lose it? What if I should wait for the perfect moment? The fear feels tidy and sensible, like a coat you wrap around yourself in winter. I sit across from him, not as critic but as guide. Prudence is a companion, I say, but when it becomes the reason you never move, it becomes the jailer. He looks up, voice tight. "I'm just protecting what I have." "Protection can be a posture," I reply, "or a practice. Let's test it." We walk through it step by step. Outside, the street smells of wet pavement, a neighbor tends her small garden, sunlight catching on the metal of a watering can. I ask him to name the exact fear: losing savings, being judged, making the wrong choice, and watch how naming it loosens its grip. He calls his bank, the clerk's voice ordinary and human, the conversation is clumsy but doable. Later, in his living room, he opens an investment app and sets an automatic transfer of a modest amount he can live without. His hand trembles, then steadies. "This feels risky," he admits. "It does," I say, "and risk is different from recklessness. You're not leaping into the dark, you're stepping toward clarity." We create a small ritual, a brief visualization of what financial expansion feels like, a note of gratitude taped to the fridge, and a simple ledger where he records tiny wins: one call made, one transfer set, one course completed. Each item, though small, shifts his dominant emotion from scarcity-fueled caution to curiosity and empowered action. He sleeps better that night, not because the fear vanished, but because action diluted it. In the morning newsfeed, a headline about an ordinary person's measured success doesn't jolt him, it nods like confirmation. If this moment spoke to you, tap like and tell me in the comments, which financial fear holds you back today? If you want practical guidance for the next steps, subscribe and join me in the next segment, where we turn that first brave act into a clear, repeatable map for sustainable growth. The hero sits at the kitchen table again, moonlight slicing across unpaid bills and a laptop open to a small, sensible investment plan. Outside, the neighborhood is quiet. Inside, the old nervous voice is louder tonight. The guide leans forward, not with solutions to shove down the throat, but with a steady question: what would prudence look like if fear weren't in charge? The hero breathes, pictures a clear spreadsheet, a calendar with one decision circled: research, call, Commit. Start with one number, the guide says. Not a lifetime promise, just one measurable step. They talk like two neighbors sharing coffee rather than guru and disciple. I'm terrified of losing what I have, the hero admits. What if I make it worse? The guide smiles with the calm of someone who has seen this drama before. Then you'll learn. But if you never move, you'll only ever imagine loss. The universe responds to your dominant feeling. When you practice clarity and small acts of courage, you begin to attract options instead of excuses. Cut to morning light, the hero on a call with a financial coach, voice slightly shaky, then firmer with each sentence. We hear the practical choreography: an emergency fund rebalanced, a modest allocation to a diversified fund, an appointment scheduled to learn more. Each small decision feels like a pebble dropped into a lake. Ripples appear: a returned email offering freelance work, a neighbor recommending a trustworthy planner, a small dividend notice that arrives like a minor blessing. The hero notices the pattern and, more importantly, notices their reaction. Curiosity replaces catastrophizing, possibility begins to outshine paralysis. There is no dramatic vanishing of fear. Instead, fear becomes a companion whose volume is turned down. Courage, the guide reminds them, is not absence of worry but commitment to move anyway. The hero practices a nightly ritual: 5 minutes of clarity, name one next step, imagine it complete, feel the relief of action. That tiny ritual becomes a cliff-edge lifeline to momentum. If this scene resonates, ask yourself now, which specific financial fear keeps you frozen? Share it, and if you want to follow the final part of this journey, where planning turns into steady growth, stay with me and subscribe. The last act will show how the small, steady choices turned into lasting prosperity. The sun leans into the kitchen window as the hero sits at the same table where uncertainty used to feel like a heavy blanket. You can almost hear the soft scrape of a pen across a notepad as they write a realistic plan: small, measurable steps that honor prudence but refuse paralysis. I'm afraid, they admit aloud, voice steady. But I will act anyway. That sentence is the turning point, not a grand victory, but a practical vow that changes the current of their days. They remember the nights spent imagining every worst-case scenario, how those images shaped decisions: hoarding cash under fear's counsel, saying no to opportunities because of what if felt louder than hope. Now, in a quieter tone, they apply the law of attraction not as wishful thinking but as disciplined focus. Instead of letting fear be the loudest emotion, they deliberately cultivate clarity and gratitude. They visualize a next quarter where a conservative investment grows steadily, where a side income blooms from a skill they always dismissed as impractical. The universe responds, not by magic, but by aligning their attention with opportunities they had been blind to. A neighbor drops by with a question about retirement, and the hero explains, I didn't stop fearing risk overnight. I learned to separate caution from inactivity. I choose steps that feel sensible and also a little brave. The neighbor nods, eyes bright, because the courage to move even with discomfort is contagious. Practical habits follow: a weekly review of finances, a brief meditation each morning to remind intention, a call to a trusted advisor, and one modest investment that respects their timeline. These are small acts, cinematic in their own quiet way: filming receipts, smiling at growth graphs, planting a small herb garden that becomes a metaphor for gradual prosperity. Each action trains the nervous system to tolerate ambiguity and to reward momentum. The final lesson rests softly: fear does not define your financial future, your habitual response to fear does. When you choose clarity, when you act with courage that honors prudence, you begin to attract larger possibilities. So ask yourself now, what financial fear have you been treating as identity? If you want gentle, practical guidance for your first step, like this video and tell me in the comments which fear holds you back today. If you'd like more short, actionable practices to turn that fear into forward motion, subscribe and join the next conversation.